Guess we really are making up for lost time, aren't we? What's good, neighborhood? So, as of now, I've missed two Warframe Wednesday streams, and honestly, with the way I've been trying to keep consistent with this stuff, I can't let it slide. So, we're gonna get right down to work right now. And today's target, well, I'll have today's target loaded up in just 1 second. Yes, someone did in fact say Warframe. Hold on. Brian, Jan, Blue, good to see all three of you. And, no, Ivara is not on the menu for today.
I've been taking time to work on me.
Well, I will say this though. I've been getting a lot of good use out of both Ivara and Ivara Prime. But here's the guy we're going to be covering today. Baron Samedi, Brother Voodoo, or as the game simply likes to call him, Limbo. Now, the big thing about Limbo is he's got some rather unique tactical abilities just based on the kit that he has for his moves. Unfortunately, the way a lot of people tend to use Limbo, it gets to the point where there's a rather loud contingent of the Warframe user base that whenever they see whenever they see a Limbo as part of their team lineup for missions, they immediately bail.
Operator, did you hear that? It said
Well,
cosmic background radiation is a
they
riot.
bail or worse. Because I mean, at the very least, when people bail on a Limbo, they're just out. But the people that hate Limbo that stick around usually tend to be really freaking well. I'll just say right now, they tend to be really dickish towards Limbo players, and that's because a lot of a lot of well, not a lot, but a good number of Limbo mains, they tend to get trigger happy with his skills. But hopefully today, for any rookies that are watching, this right here is not only going to help you get the most out of Limbo's kit, but hopefully I'll also be able to provide some tips to, if nothing else, help ensure that you, as a Limbo player or even as a Limbo main, can continue proving to be useful to your team. Excuse me. So with that being said, we're gonna jump to the practice arena, and I will go ahead and get started laying out just what Limbo can do. And yeah, that's true. There are some players that just use his abilities to troll troll their teammates, and that is another understandable gripe as far as people disliking Limbo. But let's get in there and get y'all started. Because I honestly think that once you get the hang of what this cat can do, I think you'll find that he's a lot of fun. So, the big thing about Limbo is that he literally operates on effectively two different planes of existence. There's, you know, there's the normal plane that we're standing on right now. And then there's the Rift. Now, Limbo's passive ability is literally the fact that anytime he dashes, or basically when you tap the left bumper or L1, whichever button you have assigned to it, whichever way you roll or dash or sidestep, Limbo jumps into the Rift. Dashing again brings you out of it. So that's pretty much one of your big ways to shift between the two planes, and this is going to be the core of a lot of Limbo's strategies. Another thing to keep an eye on is that whenever you dash with Limbo, you'll notice that he actually leaves behind a tear between the two planes that, while it's on screen, any of your other teammates can use. Again, part of Limbo's strategy, because that's not only what's going to help him deal his damage, but also what'll help your teammates find cover when they're basically dealing with a lot of when they're basically taking a lot of heavy fire. So let's go ahead and pull up a set of enemies, and we'll get started. Finally, showing off his abilities. First ability that you start with once you the first ability that you start with once you actually acquire Limbo, and I will actually, you know what? We'll start off with how you actually acquire Limbo. Now, not only through his it's not only his strategy, but how you pick him up is also interesting, because Limbo is one of the frames that you get through one of the story quests that you unlock as you go through the game. That story quest, of course, being called the Limbo Theorem. Not to spoil the quest itself, but the Limbo Theorem not only points you to different parts of the solar system where you'll pick up his component blueprints, but it also, in the lore, it also tells you about who was effectively the last, I guess you could call him, who's the last Tenno, the last frame runner to actually use Limbo actively before you rediscover him. and it tells you all about how they actually came up with the concept for Limbo's abilities. Now that that's out of the way, let's get down to Limbo's skills. Excuse me. So the first skill that you get with Limbo once you actually acquire him and build him is Banish. Banish does a light amount of damage. It does some AoE off of not just the target that you hit, but a certain range around it. But what it does is it forces your targets into the rift. So they can't affect you while you're on the regular plane, but you can't affect them, at least until the effect wears off. Again, people get trigger happy with this. So some enemy targets that another person might be aiming for, you cast Banish, and boom, that's a bunch of enemies they can't shoot. Or you cast that on your teammate, and it forces them to the other into the rift as well. However, you've got enemies in the rift now, right? If you want to continue doing the damage while they're still Riftside, Banish, dash, and then commence with the attack. Being able to manage not only what plane you're in, but what plane the enemy is the core gameplay loop. That's the core workflow for Limbo. And working with Banish actually helps you get used to that. Another thing that's really useful is that while you're Another thing that's really useful is that while you're Riftside, you'll recover energy at a faster rate, which will allow you to do even more damage or cast your abilities more often. All right, let's go ahead and jump on to Limbo's second ability, Stasis. Now, Stasis only affects enemies that are in the rift. So, if you cast Stasis first, that's fine. But if you've already caught an enemy with, say, Banish, now you see what Stasis does. Anything that's in the rift and caught in Stasis gets frozen. Much greater crowd control. And of course, that's greater crowd control and that's free damage. I'll take a look at what's going on with the Smash Direct a little bit later. But anyway, that's that for that ability. Limbo's third ability. Well, Limbo's third ability I can't cast unless I've got someone stuck in the rift. So, we're going to do Banish one more time. And then Limbo's third ability, Rift Surge. Now, what it basically does is that any enemies that are killed, any enemies that are killed while Rift Surge is active, it causes an AoE which pretty much crosses the barrier from the rift into the material plane and immediately basically casts a radial banish. But what it also does is it makes enemies more vulnerable to taking damage while you're Riftside. Now, last but not least, once you get to rank 10, Limbo is, well, he's the second character on this lineup with a trouble bubble. His fourth ability, Cataclysm, does damage and basically creates a barrier or creates a bubble that when you cross into it, you're in the rift. So anything caught within the barrier is pretty much affected or is pretty much vulnerable to any sort of rift abilities. That includes, of course, Rift Surge and also Stasis. But what's more is that at the end of its duration, as you just saw, when it collapses, it does another burst of additional damage. So let's say, for example, you cast Stasis first, just to kind of set yourself up. And I don't have enough energy for that. Let's fix that, shall we? And we'll try this again. So you cast Stasis to set yourself up. And then cast Cataclysm on an area. Everything in there is immediately frozen, and you get to go to work. If you want some additional insurance, then you, of course, cast Rift Surge. Ahem. You cast Rift Surge. And if there were any other enemies around that weren't affected by Banish, then those that I just killed would cause that AoE, would cause that radial banish. Now, I'm sure as you can imagine just from checking out those four abilities and again, working with the whole jumping between planes, I'll bet that you can already see what kind of interesting synergies and tactics that Limbo can actually put together. Again, just using his abilities, you don't even have to. Well, I won't say you don't even have to, but just using his abilities, and this is before you even get down to working with any sort of mods. Speaking of mods, let's jump into his arsenal real quick and talk about the augment mods that you can get for him. Funny enough, I don't even have those. But the augment mods that Limbo actually comes with, here we go. I knew I wrote those down for a reason. So the augment mods that he has, which I will also be listing in the description once I post this up on YouTube, are, well, the first of them is Rift Haven, which pretty much makes it so that whenever you cast Banish on an ally, not only will they be pushed into the rift, but they'll also have a percentage of their maximum health restored, up to 25%. So if you at the very least have that, then even if you get trigger happy with the banish, you can make you can actually make for a pretty decent healer. Stasis doesn't have an augment mod because, well, stasis is pretty straightforward. The augment for Rift Surge, Rift Torrent, is one that basically just increases your damage for each enemy affected by Rift Surge while you're in the rift. So you cast Rift Surge, you catch a good sized group of enemies, and it'll pump up your damage up to a maximum of an extra 30%. The augment for Cataclysm is called Cataclysmic Continuum. For every enemy that you kill inside the trouble bubble, it extends the bubble's duration by another second. Well, by up to another second per enemy. But if you're catching lots of groups within the Cataclysm and then just rattling off kill after kill after kill, you can basically keep it going for a long time. So now that we've got that all the way, we've got all of Rimbo. Rimbo, come on. Mm. Now that we've basically got Limbo's toolkit all worked out, we're going to go ahead and run a mission with him. And again, yes, I've already got the frame ranked up to rank 30, but this is no mods on no mods on the frame, no mods on his weapons. So this is just the sharp dressed. This is every girl's crazy about a sharp dressed man. And we'll do a quick exterminate mission just to show off what he can do. Now with Limbo's abilities though, he can actually work really well in survival missions running on his own. But he's also really good for spy missions too, because when you cut into the rift, although enemies may still be able to see you, laser tripwires or most traps won't actually won't actually physically affect you, so you can just pass right through security beams in order to get the job done.
Eliminate all Corvus threats.
These Corvus remind me of the Origin. Selfish, greedy.
My intel suggests there are rich enemy supply caches in the area.
Oh no, you don't.
Unable to pinpoint
No alarm for you.
Search them out if you are willing to shoulder the added risk.
Okay, so like I was saying, You usually want to cast certain abilities like Stasis in short order before you hit something with Banish or hit the Cataclysm. So we'll Stasis first, and then boom. Now, any abilities that have a duration on it, you can recast them in order to end them prematurely, which in some cases can help. See now how I'm already taking enemy fire? Boom. I jump over into the rift. I've got a chance to recover my shields, recover my energy as well. And all they can do is just fire aimlessly. But then, dig this. Stasis. Banish. Jump back into the rift and proceed to finish the skirmish before anything else has a time before anything else has a chance to react. Now, when you're working without mods, jumping into the rift is going to be your jumping into the rift is going to be your best chance as far as making sure to find cover so that way you're not taking insane amounts of damage before you can actually plot out your next move. And once again, enemies that aren't killed by the initial damage from casting Cataclysm, they get locked in place when you've got stasis active. Normally, most enemies won't try and set foot into the Cataclysm bubble with you, so you can use the duration of that as part of your defensive options. Now, maybe if I was only a little bit more accurate with these shots. Well, and of course, with weapons that have a long reload time, then jumping into the rift is going to be even more useful because that'll give you time to reload. So I guess one way to really keep mindful of what you're doing with Limbo is to remember this. You have to constantly shuffle the deck. The more you shuffle, the less damage you take. But also, the more you shuffle not only yourself, but the more you shuffle enemies, then you can control the battlefield and dish out more damage to them as well. I now move my Limbo into defense mode. Yes, that was dumb, I know. Ground me. But do keep in mind that even without stasis, you can just cast Banish on enemies and just do straight damage. Okay, I need to get up there. Okay, that didn't work out as well as I had thought. That'll work. Oh. That is going to be the one issue that you will have with Limbo. Nullifiers. Man, nullifiers will not make it easy for you to keep up any sort of defensive barrier. So once you see those bad boys on the screen, you need to pop their bubble immediately. Come on. The stasis is worn off. You can come in now.
Relics of a bygone era. My amalgams are the new paradigm.
Oh no. Oh no. I'm not in good shape here. Woof. You see how now it's pretty much become an absolute necessity that I shuffle between the rift in order to make sure I don't wind up having the last of my health completely obliterated. Okay, that's not good. Damn you nullifiers! Not doing too shabby so far. Ah, I'm eventually gonna need to get down to. Oh, here lies Limbo. But as I was going to say, I'm eventually gonna need to get around to installing and playing that myself. Oh yeah, Doom Eternal is gonna be awesome. There we go. Need to switch to something with a little more punch. I've got 2016. Okay, let's take a little bit of time to recover my energy. That's fair. That's fair. I would have no problem just simply calling it. I guess it would be Doom 4, yeah. Okay, I've got a few more enemies down this way.
The enemy is broken. Well done. Now get to extraction.
And now, when all I have left to do is just get to the extraction point, I can jump into the rift and just run. Okay, so now that that is completely out of the way, let's let's switch over to a limbo that's more properly kitted, shall we? So, as you can probably guess, if you are going to modify, if you are going to add any sort of mods to Limbo, then what you want to basically mod him for, especially if you're playing solo, is range and duration. You know, you want his abilities to cover a wide arc, and you want them to last a long time. And at that point, you can simply stick to relying on your firearms and your melee weapons in order to help you through. Okay. I didn't I didn't upgrade the standard redeemer? I need to fix that.
Me too.
Now, if you want to get a real good look at a real good look at some insanity that you can build Limbo for, then I would say look no further. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Defection. Damn it. Oh, let's jump back here. Because what you want to do is look no further than what you can do on defense missions. Again, if you're running defense solo, then range and duration is going to be your best friend. If you're working with a team, then you'll want to minimize the range so that, if anything, you can still cast Cataclysm over. You can still cast Cataclysm over the target.
Our doorstep. We must defend our equipment until reinforcements arrive.
They'll have plenty of robotics. Workers never fight for themselves.
And here we go. First wave incoming. I cast Stasis and Cataclysm, and with the way I've got my Limbo modded, Cataclysm is a lot bigger, and it lasts for in upwards of 45 seconds. So all I have to do basically is just keep myself in the rift, keep the defense target in. And basically anything that thinks it can get close enough to get a shot off gets locked in place. And again, anything that survives the initial casting of Cataclysm takes damage when they touch the bubble or while they're inside. So even when I'm not actively doing the work, I'm still doing the work. And if I want to be really messed up, then if I've got any targets left that I can find that are still alive, then I can just cast a Rift Surge while I'm at it.
I will consider what I've learned from the skirmish.
Already on wave 5, and there's been next to no damage done to the defense target. And if I had the time or the inclination, then I could keep doing this all day. Well, except for when nullifiers show up. Oops. There you go. Stop that. And with that, the mission's done.
You held them all back. Time to get out of here.
Let's go.
So that, in a nutshell,
It's that time again, dreamers.
that's your Limbo. That's the guy that everyone, for some odd reason,
Later.
gets themselves all in their feelings about, largely because folks are just trigger happy with using these abilities instead of really taking the time to think. And also, people just being trolls and forcing their teammates between planes just willy-nilly. Excuse me. So, with that being said, that's gonna do it for this Warframe. Well, this late Warframe Wednesday stream. I appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out. I'm gonna go ahead and drop so that way I can finish getting ready for work. But we'll be back with the next Warframe tomorrow, and that one is going to be Nyx. So keep your eyes out for that. Hopefully, I'll be able to do some rather decent stuff, and also hopefully, hopefully I'll just be able to stream it all. But anyway, y'all have yourselves a top-notch Thursday. I will catch you on the next one.
Everything in orders, operator? Is that a pun? I will attempt to bypass this fault.
Also, Ortis, you're grounded. Anyway, stay good, neighborhood.